Hello and welcome. Just bear with us a moment while we get all of our panelists on board. Hi, Pat.
Hello.
And hello, everyone out there in the wherever you are zooming in from. For those of you who don't know, my name is Robbie Knock, and I'm the Director of Entrepreneurship and Professional Practice at ArtCenter. And we are dedicated to providing support for our student and alumni entrepreneurs and business owners throughout the entire trajectory of their professional lives. And as many of you know, BOLD and our symposium series launched in 2014 with the mission to educate artists and designers in the critical business skills needed to launch and sustain independent businesses. And we've grown this from a symposium to a series of workshops and panels and intimate sessions to really connect the ArtCenter community with the business results that they need. So our plans obviously have changed over the course of the last 6 weeks, and we were planning a big symposium at ArtCenter in the fall, but we realized that there's so much uncertainty about what might be coming next with the pandemic and with social distancing. So we decided to move very quickly to launch a series of webinars, knowing that so many of our community are online and at home and really wondering what will come next. And part of the reason we've moved so quickly with this is that the resources and opportunities to keep your businesses afloat have been changing daily. The Government CARES Act has been launched and relaunched, and people have had some success, but there's also been some challenges, and there's a whole host of questions associated with how does this affect me? Whether you're a sole proprietor or run a small team, how do you manage all of the questions associated with resources, loans, and any other opportunities that might keep you alive and thriving? So that's the sort of broad intro here. And the format today, many of you probably have been in Zoom webinars before. The format is going to be a 45-minute presentation followed by a Q&A directly with our audience here. And in order to manage all of the questions and all of the incoming messages from our attendees, please enter your questions into the Q&A window, and we will make sure that we answer the questions that have the most overlap with the areas that we're sharing. And if your question doesn't get answered, we'll make sure that there's follow-up available with Pat and the Sbdc in the regions around Los Angeles. So with that, I'll just do a quick intro here of Pat Nye. He's the Executive Director of the Los Angeles Regional Sbdc. And as in that position, has a whole network of business development centers that help small businesses navigate all kinds of challenges, both today with the CARES Act, but any business and kind of strategic and planning challenges that owners go through as they look to take on loans and grow and maybe tackle new market sectors that they might not have already been operating in. And so we know that there's tons of questions about what the future holds, and ArtCenter is a gateway to this incredible network. And we're lucky to have Pat here. He works across the region with the centers both in Orange County and Pasadena and up in Santa Barbara, and he can give you more insights on that as we dive on in. So again, please enter your questions into the Q&A. The chat is disabled because it doesn't serve the Q&A purposes particularly well. And with that, I'll leave it in Pat's hands, and we'll take it from there. And thank you so much for being a part of this and offering your time, Pat.
Oh, of course, and thank you, Robbie, and thank you to ArtCenter and Bold 2020. I've been fortunate enough to attend the last two Bold symposiums, and I leave with a ton of great information. So my role is as mentioned, I run the Small Business Development Center Network, the Sbdc. And for those who aren't familiar, the Sbdc is a national program. You can find us in every state and US territory. We are funded each year through a congressional appropriation that is delivered to us through a grant from the Small Business Administration. So we are not officially part of the SBA, but we are one of their funded technical assistance partners. So our role is to really help small businesses navigate whatever challenges they may be facing. And that can be anything from a new business starting and trying to navigate their first business plan to a business who's been around for a dozen years and maybe they're looking to grow and acquire some more retail locations. We support online social media, marketing, really all of the things that a small business owner might be facing. For Los Angeles, our territory is LA, Ventura, and Santa Barbara. Within that territory, I have 8 centers and approximately 150 small business professionals that we pay through this federal grant, as well as we receive state funding. We pay them to meet one-on-one with small businesses, and all of that is at no cost to the small business. So all of our services are free, or as we like to say, they've already been paid for by our taxes collectively. And it's all confidential, so we don't share anything unless you happen to want to be part of our success stories or something like that. If you don't happen to be in this region, we can still work with you, or we have counterparts throughout California as well as across the country. If you go to americassbdc.org, there's a place where you can enter in your zip code and it'll tell you the nearest center to you. And all you have to do is contact them and they will match you with an advisor. We also hold trainings where we typically are training people on things like QuickBooks or business plans, things like that. Currently, we're using all of our advisors and assets to help people navigate all of the resources that are available to them. And today, I'll touch on some of those resources, including the federal stimulus loans, unemployment, and insurance claims, things like that. So we'll touch on each of those areas. Certainly, if questions come up, please utilize the Q&A. One thing I did want to start with is that, what I've found is typically businesses or folks who are sole proprietors, like many ArtCenter grads, they don't tend to think of themselves as a small business. And in fact, it was at the Bold Symposium last year where the presenter, asked the crowd, what's your business? And people offered up, photography or design or all of those things. And he said, no, your business is sales. You're all in sales. You're actively marketing some good or service out to somebody. So I do want everyone to consider themselves as a small business, and therefore you have access to all of these resources, just like those folks we traditionally think of as a small business, like the mom and pop store on the corner, or even larger enterprises. I encourage everybody to adopt that mindset. And while you may not have a ton of business experience, programs like the Sbdc are here to help. We deal with folks all the time who have a ton of expertise in their specific area, but maybe they don't understand accounting or know a lot about marketing. That's where we pay professionals to step in and work and to help navigate some of those things. So just bear all that in mind. So I know a lot of folks have been paying attention to the federal loans, the 2 loans given out by or supported by the Small Business Administration. The first one of those loans is referred to as the EIDL, and that's the Emergency Disaster Loan. And that one is a loan that's given directly through the SBA. You don't have to go through a bank or other lender. Those are all done through a portal that the SBA has, and that's typically used for events where a disaster occurs. We have seen these types of loans in this program in our region before with all of the fires that we faced over the past couple of years. So areas impacted by these fires could go, apply for a loan, process through that, and hopefully get funding through the EIDL program. This is a little different in that our entire country has been declared a disaster. So there's a lot more attention on these resources in the EIDL loan. With that, I know many folks are either in the queue or hope to get in the queue. And currently, the status is that, well, over the weekend, we did see additional funding from another round of CARES Act go out to these programs. The EIDL loan currently is still not taking any new applications. They are processing through the applications they had already received. And as I've heard, roughly they've hit about 10% of the loan applications that they had already received. So they're still processing through those. So for anybody who may have submitted to an EIDL loan, we ask that you hang in there, you are in the queue. At the end of this presentation, I'll share some resources that may allow you to get an idea of where you are, or maybe have an update on where your forms are. But I do know that these are taking 14 to 21 days to process. So if you're in there, you don't have to reapply. You don't need to do anything. Just stay on top of it and expect these things to come through. And for that EIDL loan, that's a little different than a traditional loan in that it's really just a loan that is the amount is given to you. You're not asking for a specific amount. You're not negotiating. You're just given a specific amount of the loan. And those funds are used to pay for your operational expenses, things that will keep you in business, during this emergency situation. So, it's a really useful loan. The terms are 3.75% for a period of 30 years. So it's much like a mortgage at this point. And if you're a nonprofit, the rate is 2.75. There's no penalty for early repayment. So if you happen to get access to this loan and find out you don't actually need to utilize it because you have other resources, you can just pay that back and not have to worry about 30 years worth of terms. So again, on the EIDL loan, please hang in there on that. We do hope that they will be able to get some breathing room and open up for new applications. If you check in with the Sbdc, we'll definitely be keeping on top of that news and can share updates with you as it goes. But for right now, they're currently not accepting any new applications. But they did declare the disaster out to December. So we think that there's a good chance of them opening up future rounds of funding and hopefully supporting new applications, sometime in the future. And so, and that is a loan that's really available to everyone, sole proprietors, small businesses alike. The other big loan is the PPP loan, the Paycheck Protection Loan. That one is a loan guarantee program, and this is what the SBA typically does. They're not normally a direct lender like they are with this emergency loan, but they typically guarantee loans for banks to be able to loan to small businesses. So it gets the businesses to take on a little bit more risk and maybe loan to businesses they might not otherwise. So that's the SBA loan guarantee program. And for PPP, this is the approach they've taken. So what that means is that anyone applying to that, you have to go through your lender. and we recommend you going through the bank you have a current business account with, but you're not required to do that. And there are some other lenders who have been entertaining new clients. As we've heard, some bigger lenders have basically maxed out the applications they would take. They did shut that one down last week, and or actually the week before, and with this new funding, they opened up new applications again, and that happened at 7:30 this morning. So again, that is up to your bank, however, so we don't know which banks at this point are actively taking new applications or not, but we do highly recommend to everyone who thinks they may be interested in that loan to take advantage of it. It's a 1% loan, so pretty cheap money, and it's a 2-year term, and up to 100% of the loan can be forgiven. And this is the real nuance where most of the questions come up around the PPP program, because everybody's, of course, interested in having their loan forgiven so they don't see payments in the future. I will urge everybody to realize that these are loans, and you should not assume that they're grants or anything otherwise. We hope that everybody is able to take advantage of the forgiveness portions, but if that does not happen, you do have to pay back the loan, and all the requirements of a typical loan would be in place. So do know that as you go into any arrangement with either of these products. So the forgivable portion is really at the heart of the PPP program, where this was essentially designed to keep employees out of the unemployment system. So the idea was to incentivize small business owners to get the capital they need to continue operating. And it starts basically an 8-week period. So as soon as you get the loan, you have to maintain the same payroll that you applied for with the loan over that 8-week period. And if you do that and track all that, it goes towards the qualifying expenses, then that loan can be forgiven up to 100%. And at least 75% has to be on direct payroll. And then another 25% can be on things like rent and sort of the support things that you use for your business. That does not mean that your workers have to be working, that you have to be open and up to full capacity. You could be paying your workers at home and meet the payroll requirements of your 8 weeks. And for those businesses who, like a restaurant or somebody who may not be able to open at this point, but they are interested in keeping their employees and having them engaged, the idea is that you could pay your employees and maybe have them working on things like professional development, or working with you on strategies for when you do reopen, things that you can do from home until you can be back in a physical space during this 8-week period. So you maintain your payroll, keep those employees out of the unemployment system, and then the idea is that at the end of the 8 weeks, the outlook is a little bit better and people can start opening up, and you've managed to retain all of your employees rather than potentially losing them to unemployment and not being able to bring back your experienced staff later. That said, this loan does still apply for sole proprietors as well. So the payment calculation is a little bit different. You have to work with your bank to get them to understand that you may not be a W-2 wage earner for your business, but you may have owner draws or revenue coming out of the business. So you'll have to share some specific information with your lender and help walk through coming up with the equivalent of a salary for yourself as a sole proprietor for those loans. Again, those opened up today. I know that many lenders have a very large backlog of loans, and hopefully they will work to get through all of those and start accepting new applications. With this round in particular, they opened up a specific amount of funding to be available for small community lenders. And the best place to see if maybe your small credit union or other community lender qualifies is to go to sba.gov to look for certified SBA lenders. And they have a tool that's a mapping function that can tell you if the bank is an SBA lender. They won't tell you if that lender is specifically accepting new applications. That's really up to the bank, but it will at least give you a head start in seeing who's eligible to service those types of loans. So I know there will be more questions on the PPP as we get going, but that's sort of a broad overview. The next big area I want to touch on, especially for sole proprietors, tomorrow is a very big day for California Employment Department. So tomorrow opens up applications for all of those who don't normally receive unemployment benefits. And this is under the PUA benefits, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. So what this means is that sole proprietors, small business owners, gig workers, people like Lyft drivers, Airbnb operators, things like that, will now qualify for unemployment within the state of California. And so tomorrow opens up the applications, and as I just learned about an hour ago, the soonest you can apply is 2 a.m. Tomorrow morning. So the system will be down up until that point, but it does open up at 2 a.m. and that would be the earliest to apply. The way it works is that you will apply and receive a minimum amount of California state benefits. And so that's $167 a week through the state of California. If you happen to have proof of W-2 or other earnings, you may earn more than that base amount, up to $450 a week. And that's the typical max that somebody collecting unemployment from the state of California receives during normal circumstances. So they're guaranteeing $167 minimum per week for everyone applying, who successfully gets approved. But if you happen to have, proof or documentation of higher wages, you may be able to get up to $450 a week out of the state. In addition to the state benefits, they're adding federal benefits, and that adds an extra $600 a week onto the state benefits. So those things are designed to work together. So you would get both the state and the federal benefits on top of that. And for the state benefit, or for the federal benefits, that's retroactive back to when you first were impacted by this event. And so for most of us in California, that was the middle of March, somewhere between March 15th or 19th, that businesses were shut down. But if you happen to be like, somebody who works in the event industry, a photographer, something like that, if you have, any kind of proof that maybe a job got canceled or pushed back or something like that, have that on hand so you can show that you were impacted at a different date. And so I do think having some things on hand will be important as you apply. So one, having some kind of documentation that shows when you were impacted, so you have a date, and then also have your tax information, whatever your latest tax information might have been. If it's not 2019, because those have been extended, utilize 2018, and have your net revenue available, because that's what they're going to use to determine how much you earn for the California state portion of the benefits. And so they're going to have to come up with a way to establish what would be the equivalent of an employee's salary. And for self-employed folks, small business operators, that's going to be, your net revenues off of your business. And so have that information available as well. As I understand, they're going to make it sort of as quick and easy as possible for folks. So you'll go in, you'll fill out the application, and then hopefully within a few days, they'll be getting money out to you. And when on unemployment, it's essentially a 2 week at a time system. So I do know, with this pandemic unemployment insurance, they will be getting the stuff turned around pretty quickly, but then you're going to be called on to self-certify every 2 weeks. I think they're waiving the first period of that as part of the application. But then every 2 weeks, you're going to be asked if you looked for work, if you were available to work, and if you did work or not. And you have to answer that truthfully and accurately on their site. And if you did happen to work, like let's say you got 10 hours, designing something somewhere, you need to enter that in, and that may reduce your benefits for that week, because some of it is being made up by work you were able to gain out in the market. But it doesn't mean it cancels your benefits. It doesn't mean, if next week you didn't work at all, you don't get the full benefit again. It just tracks that and fluctuates up and down depending on your earnings over the full period of your unemployment benefits. So do expect to, I assume, go online and verify every 2 weeks that you either did or did not work, you were actively seeking work, and if you did work, what those hours were. I also want to raise a very specific point to sole proprietors and a lot of folks who work under contract or in event space, things like that. Just because you land a contract today, let's say I land a contract to work at an event and provide photography out 3 months from now. They may have paid me a retainer today, so I technically have received some cash. And so the question is, when I'm logging into the unemployment system, do I claim that as work or not? And my strong suggestion is to not claim that as work. You may have received the cash, but you have not actually fulfilled on the work that you are now contracted to do. That won't happen out for another 3 months when the event happens. And so you still hold a liability. So to me, until you have both received all of the funding and provided all of the service that you are now contracted to provide under that liability, you do not recognize that as funds for your work. And so, of course, engage your accounting professionals, your bookkeepers, but really, even though you may have received some cash, that you still owe something for that. You have not actually performed the duty. So be aware of that. I know that can be really confusing to folks who don't normally find themselves applying for unemployment. But do please be mindful of when you actually perform the duties under a contract that you have contracted to perform. And I can get into more detail on all the unemployment stuff, but please do be ready to apply for that tomorrow. Of course, expect, there's always potential for the sites to crash, for there to be delays. There's going to be a lot of people going into the system. Just don't give up. And for any of these resources, please pay attention to, any of the, final screens that may show you, here's your, account number, or here's your confirmation number. I know on the SBA side, they don't send you an email to follow up. They just expect at the last screen of the application process that they show you a confirmation code and that you're copying that down. So, wherever you are in the process, please make sure you track these things and do not, exit out of your browser, out of the page without jotting down that confirmation number. That makes things much easier to track down later if you need to try to get a status. The last general area I'll touch on these resources is insurance. So many small businesses carry small business insurance for a variety of reasons. And lots of policies include business disruption insurance. It's something that many operators may not be aware they even have. So I urge everybody to take a look at whatever your business insurance might be, even if you're just a sole proprietor. Review those documents, and if it looks like you have any sort of business disruption insurance, file a claim with your insurer. Now, that may be a bit disappointing in that your insurer is probably going to deny the claim. They're claiming force majeure, act of God, and that they're not responsible for claims made around an event related to a virus. That said, many states, including California, are getting involved and pushing on those insurance companies and will potentially bring forth litigation. And so if you have made a claim, you may potentially be part of a class action lawsuit later and hopefully recover some sort of damages out of that. So if you do happen to have unemployment or business disruption insurance, please do make a claim knowing that it may get denied, but then also notify the California Department of Insurance that you made a claim, share that it got denied, and they will then have that on record and be able to put you along with all the others who may be making claims to our state and take that up as an issue to basically compel insurance companies to consider this as an event that qualifies for business insurance payouts. So let's see. I guess the last thing I'll touch on before getting into Q&A would be a little bit about services of the SBDC. One of the big things, after we're sort of through the funding and unemployment and all of those things are in place, many businesses are then going to be faced with the idea of well, now what? How do I operate? How do I evolve my business to the current landscape? And so that's an area that SBDCs can be a big help. We provide professional advisors who can help you strategize your business, can help you navigate and really help you, sort of reimagine or look at the new opportunities that may be available for your business. And I know the term pivot gets used a lot, and I think that's really easier said than done for most of us. But I do think, we have a ton of resources that just have a lot of experience that can help these small businesses and sole proprietors work through strategies that are specific for your business and that may evolve over time. And as I said, our resources are no cost. There's no maximum use of us. You can use us as little or as long as you want, for as many years as you'd like, as a trusted resource to help you navigate any of these issues. So we do want to help businesses figure out, how to thrive and be prosperous, with whatever the business world looks like when we're through this disaster. So with that, I'd like to jump into questions.
Thank you, Pat. Great overview. And it's a pleasure to introduce our moderator here, who's going to help kind of coalesce all of the questions that we have online and a few other key areas that we've identified people have challenges with. So it's my pleasure to introduce Yvette Roman, who is an ArtCenter alum and an incredible photographer and strategist and one of our co-chairs of the BOLD program at ArtCenter. She has helped us build this from an early idea and is now worked very closely over the last 5 years with myself and ArtCenter and a great team to really evolve what we do. So Yvette has been thinking a lot about what are some of those key areas that a freelancer or a sole proprietor might be worried about. And we have a sort of a list of key areas that we'd like to discuss. And we're going to cover all of the questions that have been submitted thus far. Thank you for submitting those clearly and simply. And Yvette, I'll leave it to you to get going.
Hey, Pat, thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful for your time at such short notice in this emergency. So I have a list of questions and more questions are coming in and I'll kind of pivot back and forth. But I did want to start with a few problems people are having that I saw coming up consistently in my research with the applications, et cetera. One is can you clarify the number system of EIDL 2 and the 3 and what that means?
Yeah, so the EIDL loan was launched in February. And at that point, the SBA was really hustling to revamp their system to be able to handle such a large disaster area. And typically these are very localized events. And so in some cases it was a paper form or a very rudimentary online form. And so up until March 30th, anybody applying would have received a confirmation number that began with a 2. After the 30th, they got a third-party provider involved who has a very nice and very easy to use web portal for application. They also added in the potential forgiveness portion of the EIDL, the up to $10,000 that could be forgiven out of the EIDL program. So both of those things got revamped on March 30th, and if you applied after the 30th, you would have received an application number that began with a 3. So long story short, if your confirmation number starts with a 3, you're still in the queue, you're fine, you're just waiting on SBA to process. If you still have one that begins with a 2, as soon as the EIDL site opens up again, you should reapply. If not, I have some resources that I'll share at the end here for trying to track down those applications and maybe get them edited on the back end. I don't know if that's a possibility, but I know a lot of people may be stuck. They have the wrong application number, or are sitting in the old system and not have access to apply again until EIDL opens back up. But yeah, it's important to have the number that starts with 3.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And then just a follow-up to that, I had a lot of people trying to find out how to follow up on the status of applications. It seems to be very difficult, and people are really panicked about that. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, and I know this is really frustrating. It's one of the hardest things for us too. We're one of the few places where we'll actually get on a call with somebody and give them a live voice. But in many cases, we don't have a better answer than many folks have found themselves. Again, I'll share on a slide at the end of the presentation here some resources for that, but the SBA does have a customer service line that you can call. As you might imagine, the wait for that is quite long. They also have a portal online where you can enter an email, but we were also fortunate enough in California to have a disaster public information officer from the SBA join a lot of our calls, and he has given out his work email, and of course that's gotten flooded, but he is able to get back in touch with folks usually within 3 to 4 days, and he's directly going in and finding out status for the EIDL loan. So again, I'll share that at the end. People are welcome to utilize that. Just be patient. It's just one person trying to do this, but that's how you track it down for the EIDL loan. For the PPP, that has to go through your lender. There's no SBA resource to check on that. So we encourage you to reach out to your lender and see if they can get you an update. I do know with some of the larger folks that's been challenging as they have automated systems. All I can say is just continue to ping them. And of course, at the Sbdc, as we get more information, we're constantly broadcasting that out. In fact, I'll mention each day at 3 p.m., the LA Sbdc, along with our counterparts in the Orange County Sbdc, host a daily Q&A call where we just run through all these things and answer questions much like we are here. And roughly 200 to 300 questions get answered in that session every day. And it's there every day. So that might be a good place too.
Thank you so much. I'm also getting questions. I've had questions asked to me in my research, and I'm getting a question now from one of our participants. Can somebody collect unemployment while also receiving PPP and EIDL? Yes,
so you're certainly eligible for all of these products. And do know that EIDL and PPP are loans. If you're also eligible to get unemployment, if you're able to draw that, that may impact your ability to get the forgiveness of the PPP loan, since that is also designed to go for payroll. If you're not using that on payroll, it's going to be a typical loan that you're going to have to pay back according to the terms. That may still be a good strategy for your business, but just know that the government, both state and federal, are working to ensure that nobody is double dipping on these resources. So you may be, asked questions or have to, be reviewed later. And do know that the PPP, the review for that, a lot of those guidelines are still being developed. So we don't even have a ton of great guidance for everything that will be tracked on that. But we do know that the banks will be the front lines for asking for documentation on things and having you verify payroll and stuff like that. So you're certainly eligible to apply for all of these different programs and resources. Just if you get them, track it well. For instance, if you get these 2 loans, we recommend adding another bank account and tracking expenses separately from them. So it's really nice and clean. and do work with your bookkeepers and accountants on that, so you have a really nice trail on, you know, where all the qualifying expenses went.
And you started to touch on another question that we got from the QA. If, as the PPP applies to freelancers with no employees, no business bank account, only a personal account. Okay, now I'm going to add something to that. I'm a freelancer myself, and a lot of my work I do not receive 1099s for.
Mm-hmm.
So my only, and obviously W-2s, my only proof of that work is my own bookkeeping and my own deposits. So is that going to be a problem later for people applying for these loans if they have a similar circumstance, which a lot of freelancers do?
Right. As long as you're claiming all of that in your taxes, it would show up in tax documentation. So you should be able to utilize that as proof of revenue coming in and that revenue. So, you know, this is where anybody working under the table gets bit, because any of that would not be, you know, trackable or show up in taxes or any sort of documentation.
Of course, but as long as we're filing all of our jobs, whether we receive a 1099 or not, we're good, correct?
Yeah, that would show
proper invoices to document the deposit.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and certainly if you have invoices or, you know, copies of contracts, things like that, if you were ever to experience an audit, that would be a really nice, you know, trail to be able to prove.
Okay, and then let's see. Okay, I have a question here. Currently have an unemployment claim but no payout because my 1099 was not available for calculations and had not filed 2019 taxes. Do I need to reapply for this unemployment program?
This is a really good prompt, and I'm sorry I missed this when I described it. If you have already applied for unemployment benefits as a sole proprietor or one of the categories I mentioned, you need to reapply tomorrow. This is a different program. It's set up differently. So tomorrow's the big day. Everybody needs to get in. You know, I do know, you know, before they had these resources in place, we had been, you know, suggesting to people sign up for unemployment, and many sole proprietors, you know, wound up getting a zero balance and were then in the system, but they didn't have anything to draw from without W-2s. So that was still the state, you know, getting all their stuff in order to be able to open it up to this new class of benefactors. So absolutely, tomorrow everybody needs to reapply, whether or not you've applied before.
And thank you for that. And are the two loans, are they forgivable if the business ends up filing for bankruptcy?
It's a really good question. I tried to research that one. I was not able to get a firm answer. So I'll continue digging and see if we can share that. But I don't actually know if that's automatically forgiven or not. I would assume it goes into the queue like everything else in bankruptcy, and that being a federal loan, that may continue to follow you. Okay,
good to know. Can you talk about I'd like to talk about assessing our financial health overall to decide, because all of these programs are very enticing because they seem like, oh, great, I can get money. But when you consider the greater, your greater financial picture, such as, you know, if you're in escrow for a home loan or another loan, could that affect, could that put those loans in jeopardy by applying for federal aid or unemployment at this time? Could that put other financial up in the air things in jeopardy? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. There's kind of a couple questions there. So one, the very easy one, if you're currently in process for something like a home loan or other things like that, I would recommend completing those before taking advantage of these resources. And I know that's hard because time is of the essence, of course. But, you know, for whatever reason, typically like with a home loan going through escrow or that sort of thing, they want you to look as strong as you did when you started the whole process. And so if you start claiming unemployment benefits, that's going to change, your outlook for your income. If you have another inquiry for a different loan, that's going to put a little bit more risk on your profile, and potentially make your lender think, well, can you handle the burden of the escrow or the mortgage in addition to these other loans? So I think there's an important strategy around staging things. So if you had anything else in process that you want to see through, I would say keep going with that and then take advantage of all these other resources. In terms of a bigger strategy, I think it really does make sense to look at your whole business and which one of these, if any or all of them are appropriate for your business. If you're a freelancer, sole proprietor, things like that, I think that you really can't go wrong doing unemployment. Those resources don't negatively impact you in the future. You pay into this stuff as a taxpayer, so you should take advantage. So I don't see really any negative impact to you as a business going forward, having access to unemployment benefits. If anything, that may just help tide you through when you're trying to figure out how to evolve your business or book more jobs in the future. The loans are a little bit different. You're taking on debt. Hopefully, through both loans, you can take advantage of the forgiveness portions of those loans. But I would go into it assuming that, worst case, you won't be able to do that, and you're going to have these payments to contend with in the future. That may still be the best strategy for you. If it's the choice between going out of business now or maybe sticking around and being able to operate in the future that's a little bit more positive, even if you have a little bit more debt, that can be a great strategy and the right thing to do, absolutely. But if you don't necessarily need the funding and feel like you have enough to tide yourself through, it may be a better strategy, not to incur a bunch of debt out in the future. So really, that is a personal decision. Again, we can provide advisors to help you navigate thinking through all of that and look at all the different angles. But do know these are loans and may impact you in the future. It's just the nature of these programs.
And also, one question came up that's really, I think, important to a lot of designers, illustrators, photographers in our sphere. Can you explain what defines cost of goods sold portions of the applications if our work process is computer-based and our deliverables are digital images and designs?
Yeah, this has been a tough one.
There's no physical project, So I'm sure there's a lot of, you get to that part of the application and it's a bit confusing for people who are in that area.
Absolutely. So again, we don't have guidance for how everything is going to be measured at the end yet. SBA is still developing all of that. So, please track things well, consult your accountants and bookkeepers for everything. But as I understand, your cost of goods equivalent for like a service-based industry would be looking at the cost to provide those services. So essentially looking at your overhead for any of those resources. So space, materials, anything like that.
Okay.
What it takes you to be able to provide whatever that end product may be, even if it's a service.
Great. And now I have this question from Jeffrey. I'm a US citizen who works abroad as a graphic designer, art director. I've worked full-time at a company in-house. However, contract ended at the end of 2019. The COVID situation disrupted his plans going forward. Is he eligible for any of these benefits while being overseas?
That's interesting. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I would think it would still be eligible for unemployment, but I don't know if that counts on you being here physically or not. It's a really good question. I'll have to look that up.
Okay. And Eileen asks if we have already filed at EDD should the system recognize us when we log in? Are we essentially doing the whole application again with regard?
As I understand, yes, you are. I don't think it will recognize you because as I've heard, and again, they haven't shared all the process with us. What I've heard is that it's a new system for this. You know, they're supporting companies or independents that they don't normally support, so they had to design something differently.
Okay, and then with regard to small business loan, will the interest be deductible on our taxes?
I believe it will. I can confirm that.
Looking through these. Thank you so much. Okay, here's one. As a sole proprietor, my income can fluctuate greatly from month to month. How do I determine a salary for my bank and credit union? Is that just an average?
Yeah, you would look at your tax information. So what you earned over the last year and average that out.
Yeah, by 12, they just divide it by 12.
Yeah.
So that would be sufficient?
A simple salary equivalent.
Okay, and then I'm getting this question, can students apply to these resources? I did freelance projects on the side, but my projects got postponed. I have no income for 2 months.
Yeah, it doesn't matter about your status as a student. You can certainly apply for the loan as a freelancer and should be able to take advantage of unemployment benefits as well.
Okay, and then what is being collateralized for these loans? If you're not an LLC, will say our house be vulnerable for repayment should there be a default if you're a sole proprietor?
For the EIDL loan, if it's under 25,000, there's no collateral. Above 25,000, they are looking for some collateral. So they would be looking for things like major assets, homes, vehicles, things like that. I don't know how aggressively they would go after those things if there were any issues, but you know, it's a loan, and you know, when somebody doesn't pay on that loan, they do utilize the collateral for that. Even if somebody didn't have collateral for that, if you defaulted on that, it would still be something that followed your credit report. On PPP, I don't think those are actually being collateralized. They're such a short-term loan, and they're 100% SBA backed. Over a year, I don't think they're asking for collateral on that.
Okay. And then Kenneth asks, if my workflow is still continuing but has slowed significantly due to the pandemic, can I apply for a loan through my bank or emergency disaster loan? What do you recommend?
You would certainly qualify for both. I would definitely look at unemployment as well. I think the question is, which loan makes the most sense? If you're just a sole proprietor, PPP is probably not going to be as great a fit for you, since that's really designed to support payroll. And what we've heard is that typically it's been larger small businesses working with their banks to secure those loans. And I don't know of a lot of freelancers that have successfully been awarded that yet. Where on the EIDL side, that has come through more readily. And that tends to fit business operations rather than just focused on payroll. That said, you can still apply for the PPP. You can potentially get your revenue or your owner draws forgiven, but most of it would probably convert to a short-term loan.
Okay. Joshua asked, for PPP, I have hired a lot of contractors abroad. Would I still be able to apply for PPP? Most of them aren't American citizens.
Yeah, so the bigger issue there is not so much with nationality, but PPP does not account 1099 contractors as your payroll. So if you're a business that uses all outside contractors, none of them would count on the payroll calculation. Your salary or your disbursements would, but none of the folks you contract with. Each of those 1099s, if they were in the US, they would be able to apply on their own. So separate from you as their own independent entity. But if they're located internationally, they would not qualify for these benefits.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a question. It popped up. Okay, I have a question from Kristen. To get PPP forgiveness, can 100% of the loan proceeds be used to pay myself as a sole proprietor, or does 25% of the loan need to be spent on non-payroll expenses like utilities, et cetera, in order to be forgiven?
So 100% can be applied towards payroll.
Okay.
The minimum is 75%, and then you can make up the balance with 25% on those other categories. But if your payroll load is 100% of the loan, then you can have it all be payroll. And if you don't happen to match that, you can still get forgiven a smaller amount. The rest just converts into a regular loan.
Understood. Let's see. Another one is, sorry, just 1 minute. Oh, here's another sole proprietor question. PPP asked how I will be spending money. I put 100% down on rent because I don't have myself on payroll. So how will I prove that I'm paying myself with no payroll as a sole proprietor?
So for that, I would contact your lender and see if you can go back in on that application. You would work with the lender to show that that what you earn from your business, from your sole proprietorship, would equate to a salary. So you do have payroll to yourself. You just have to work with them to demonstrate that. That will definitely improve your chances on the loan. I don't know how they would treat 100% on rent. I don't think that would be forgivable.
Okay. This might be redundant to what you were talking about retainers, but I'm going to ask you anyway. From Samuel, if I am on a freelance job now, but won't we be paid for at least 30 days? I am on a freelance job now. Other lines of work have been postponed in the event sector. Should I apply for unemployment even if I have made more than $450 per week when paid? So that's just the same as having a retainer, right? I mean, that.
Yeah, and so for instance, if right now you're not being paid for that, but will be paid, let's say a month from now, you could be claiming, certifying for those weeks that, you didn't get paid these weeks. But then when you do receive funding, then you would count that at the point of when you've delivered on that job, you've received full payment, then they would just reduce, that week or those weeks' benefits by that amount. So you were, getting paid both.
Okay, yeah, again, I wanted you to reiterate that because we're so unused to, as freelancers, having the opportunity to get any sort of benefits. Yeah. So I have to make sure that people really get that because it's just so relevant to us and this discomfort with being really on our own all up until this moment. Let's see.
And I would also say, as you're navigating all that stuff, just be sure that when you go to certify, you're going to be asked these questions that are very likely don't fit you very well if you're actively looking for work or were available for work. I would say, of course you are. You're continually trying to market your services and get jobs out there and working on your business. So, even if you didn't happen to go, call up Starbucks and see if you could be a barista or something, like that's not what they're asking. They're just in your field, are you actively available to work if it's out there?
Exactly. And do you need to back that up with anything like let's just say you post it on Instagram every day. Is that a backup that you've been searching for work if you're getting work in that manner? Because it's a business account and outreach, I mean.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they treat, sort of everybody in this specific group under the new system. I don't know how that's going to go, but what I do know from sort of the existing unemployment system, sometimes they'll have you enter in, specific places that you contacted. Other times they just allow you to, keep a log of that, that they could then ask you to produce at any point, if they reviewed later. So I would say, if it's somebody like say a wedding photographer, list the planners that you've been in contact with. like you said, on social media, how you're advertising your services, all the ways that you currently, actively look for work will demonstrate that. So just keep a good log of those things to show how you're doing it.
Exactly. All right. And then from Kristen, in calculating PPP loan amount as well as PPP loan forgiveness, should we count part-time W-2 employees on our payroll, or do we only count FTEs?
So they'll use those part-times they count. They will turn that into the full-time equivalent. So 2 part-times might equal 1 full-time equivalent. So all of that will go into the calculation.
Okay. And I applied for the EIDL loan for 10K. I only received 1K since I'm a sole proprietor and I am my own employee. How do I apply for the rest of the 9K? Do I apply for that through my bank?
Yeah, so the EIDL loan, it changed quite a bit. It seemed almost daily when it was first rolling out. So there is some confusion around this. At one point, the EIDL loan had what they were calling a grant, and it turned out that was actually an up to $10,000 advance that was potentially forgivable. So the way the EIDL loan works is that the SBA assigns a loan amount. You just get that. You don't ask for a specific amount. They just decide, based on the algorithm they have, how much you will receive. And of that, they were saying if you check the box on the form, and that was available after March 30th, if you check that box, you could elect to potentially get that $10,000 advance that was forgivable. And part of that idea was that they would be able to get funds out right away while they're still processing the rest of your loan. So as time went on, we learned that that advance was based on payroll, on headcount, not on actual cost of payroll. And so it was up to $1,000 per employee, up to 10 employees. And so if you demonstrated that you had an employee, you could potentially get an advance and have that be forgiven. So if you've already received $1,000 in an EIDL loan and you're just an independent yourself and don't have employees, that is likely the advance on the loan, and that 1,000 would potentially be forgivable. You would not be eligible for the remaining 9,000 because you wouldn't have any other employees as part of that advance. However, the rest of your loan should still be in process, and they should be working on whatever that final amount will be. And that's the balance of the loan that will be a traditional loan and not a forgivable portion. But that should still be in process. And the idea with that 1,000 was to get you some immediate funding in order to help tide you over while still in process.
Okay. I have a question from Tracy. I am just coming off of a disability situation where I'm cleared to work. Knowing that it was my date to return to work, I booked clients through the summer. Now clients have canceled. So I'm going to be losing the only employment I would have gotten after 9 months of disability. What advice do you have for filing for the PUA program?
I think you would still qualify for the PUA program. Obviously, as you say, you're ready to work, but the marketplace is not there for you. You've been impacted by this disaster. And so that's really all you have to be able to demonstrate is that, you were ready to go, but we're not able to because we're experiencing this event. So you should be able to demonstrate that in whatever the form is for the new PUA benefits. Okay,
and then I have a follow-up question to the cost of goods sold question. Eileen asks, so cost of goods sold equals the total expense on your P&L?
I believe so, although things like rent and other things might be treated separately.
Okay. And then Carlos asks, if purchase orders for new business were pending and now those POs are on hold indefinitely, which CARES Act program would you recommend applying for?
So similar to as we've discussed, that's almost like the accounting. You still haven't delivered on that work, so you are still considered unemployed. So you could certainly go for the PUA benefits, but if your business needs funding to be able to continue to operate, I think the idle loan could be a good opportunity. It really depends what your overhead is. If you have to make business rent and other things like that, you may want to take on some of those debt instruments in order to keep things going until you are able to deliver on those POs and those jobs pick back up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we pretty much answered the questions that I've had. I have one more that I'd had from another source. I just wanted to ask you real quick. I applied for everything, but was told that a sole proprietor with no employees, that their PPP application was at the back of the line and was not even submitted to the SBA in favor of businesses with employees. I have not had any response or money from the idle application. So, and that keeps coming up in different forms, just over and over and over and over again. People are having a really hard time getting feedback, so they don't know what to expect. So it's really hard to plan.
Yeah.
And then they can't get answers to these kinds of questions at all anyway. So can you talk a little bit more?
First, I'm very sympathetic to this. I know how frustrating that is. These systems are not doing a good job of keeping people up to date. Even the idle submission process doesn't send you an email confirmation or anything like that. So it is very challenging. In terms of the PPP, that really is up to your lender. And when this was launched, there was no firm guidance down to the lenders on who they had to lend to. And I'm sure people are aware of the news reports on who got some of the early funding. So it did seem that banks did have the ability to sort of pick and choose who they were serving. And unfortunately, this really does hurt the smallest businesses, because banks are only getting a 1% percentage point fee on all of this. In most cases, that's not enough for the bank to even cover their costs. And so if they're lending to a bigger entity, a bigger small business, that's going to give them a lot more opportunity to make back their cost of servicing this loan. And that's a real disadvantage to the smaller players, sole proprietors and such. You're still certainly eligible, but unfortunately, we can't control what the banks will decide to lend to. In a lot of cases, they went to their customer base, sort of the people they already have relationships with. We're hoping with this next round that will open up a little bit more. And again, there are more smaller community lenders getting involved, and there's a specific set aside of funding for those programs. So hopefully that alleviates some of that. But I would just put pressure on your lender. I would also encourage people to contact their elected officials. This is a really good time to make them earn their money and let them hear from their constituents, what you're experiencing and what's going on with these programs. For the SBA idle loan, you're in the queue. Like I'll share some info on how you can potentially follow up, but I know that they're getting to those. It's taking a long time. They're not good about checking in with people, but we have been seeing a big rise in small businesses we work with get funding. So I think you just have to hang in there. And I know that's a really tough thing to plan on, especially when you don't know if you'll be approved or how much you'll be approved for, but that's sort of the best they can do right now. Hopefully that improves. And
now I know we're running a little bit over. There's 2 more questions that come in. Would you mind if we went over them? Okay. If you already have mortgage loans with big banks like Wells Fargo, should you try getting SBA with them first, or should you try smaller banks or credit unions that may have less waiting time, which kind of feeds into what you were just saying. So
So typically they're looking at their business relationships. So I don't know if a mortgage loan would get the kind of attention you might hope. And we've heard cases where small businesses have been with a specific bank and had business accounts with them for 20 plus years and weren't getting very good service. So that really is sort of a bank by bank situation. I would probably suggest going to a small lender in this case and taking a shot. Again, it's possible you'll wind up with multiple applications in, but if you do manage to get one to go forward, just let the loan officer know and work on getting the other one pulled. But yeah, unfortunately, a lot of customer service has been suffering through all this.
So my understanding of what you said is you can cast a wide net and apply for these things through several different banks and then pull the applications if one gets accepted.
You can work on that. I don't know how easy that is to do. I think that's also depends on the bank. But that would be the best strategy. What we're telling people is that, that is a personal decision. There's an upside to casting a wide net, but then you will get credit hits. You could potentially cause yourself a delay if something moves forward. It's just really frustrating, hard to know what the best strategy is. So that's sort of as much as we know of our experience with it. So then it comes down to a personal decision.
And just to clarify something you just said, just to make sure everybody gets this, every time you apply for a loan, they check your credit. And the more places that check your credit are going to ping your credit, and your credit goes down a bit, down a bit, down a bit. That's what you're saying, right? And that's the danger of casting the wide net, is you're not looking as good to lenders the more you apply for things.
Yeah, correct? It's one of the downsides of our credit system.
All right, and then there's this, I believe, I'm sorry, I just got a note we have till 1:30. I jumped the gun. Okay, so we have a little bit more time for sure. The PPP loan is for 250% of monthly payroll, but must be used in 2 months. If you don't have much overhead expenses and don't have anything to spend the 50% on, what should I do?
That's a really interesting situation. I haven't heard of anybody getting a loan at that level compared to their payroll. I would talk to your lender and maybe see if you can get that reduced. Otherwise, I would say utilize it, take advantage of the forgiveness you can take advantage of, and then maybe just do an early repayment of everything with the balance.
Okay. And then I'd had a question, I'd had a request to go over the EIDL formula to determine the loan amount.
Yeah, so it's basically looking at net revenue, so profit, minus cost of goods, divided by 12, and then multiplied by 6, and that's 6 months worth of the loan. That's the 6-month amount. That's what we have seen for a lot of very traditional small businesses. However, tons of questions have come up about, what if I'm not profitable? What if I'm still a startup? All that. And this was not an algorithm that was shared with us by the SBA. This was us sort of doing the backwards calculations and seeing trends. So in general, most businesses are seeing it's revenue minus cost of goods divided by 12, multiplied by 6, and that's the assigned amount. I don't know what they're doing for people who don't fall into that category. Again, they haven't shared that, and certainly there are lots of folks who are, pre-revenue but still in business and carrying payroll and things like that. So the best we know is that calculation at this point. The other thing in traditional times, things like the EIDL loan, you're not capped at the first round. Assuming that you're still impacted 4 or 6 months from now, you can go back and ask for increases. I don't know what that will look like in this situation, since there's so much demand on these funds and they tend to oversubscribe. But there's a real possibility that if Treasury continues to free up resources, that you may be able to go back and get additional funding beyond these initial amounts through the EIDL program.
Okay, and then I just got another one. If purchase orders for new businesses were pending and now those POs are on hold, I think we talked about that. Which CARES Act program would you recommend applying for? So, yeah, so basically Carlos has pending jobs, but he's not sure which thing to apply, which program to apply for.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would say if he's just an individual, I would go for the unemployment assistance. If he's got payroll, then the PPP program. Um, if he's just looking to cover operational expenses, I would look at the EIDL loan. I think that would fit best. So if just an independent, I would probably look at both unemployment and the EIDL loan. But if you have any amount of payroll to carry, along with your operations, then I would take a run at the PPP program.
It does seem to me, after listening to all of this, that PPP, or that EIDL is probably the most appropriate for most freelancers.
Yeah.
As opposed to PPP, it sounds a lot more complicated for sole proprietors that aren't LLCs, that don't have officers and aren't doing payroll. And it could be maybe, because you have to think about the time and effort and energy you're applying and, using your time to do just to get $1,000. I don't know.
Hopefully more than that, but yeah. And the other thing with PPP is it's really up to your specific lender, and that can be challenging.
Exactly. So do you have any, after we've gone over all of these questions, is anything sparking you to talk about?
So I do have a slide that I would love to put up that has some really good resources on there. And I think it can be shared at the end as well, whatever follow-up we do. But I think this might be a good thing to take a look at, and I'll run through it really quick. So I'm going to share screen here. Okay, so this is just a slide from the LA Sbdc Network. As I said, we provide no-cost expertise. So our website is smallbizla.org. That's our number there. I encourage everybody to take advantage of that. We will definitely have you talking to a person in 24 hours and hopefully set up with an appointment to meet with a business advisor shortly thereafter, and they can help you navigate through the applications for any of these programs. They can help you develop strategies for your business going forward, what's going to work best for you. We have a large team out there ready to serve. The next item there, we have a daily webinar that we do with the Orange County Network, some folks that have some really amazing expertise on that call around these loan programs. We occasionally have an SBA representative on there. We have HR professionals on there every other day. So that's every day at 3 o'clock, and you just need to go to that link there and you'll see a place to sign up for the webinar, and you can get your questions answered in real time by a whole team of professionals. For the unemployment, again, tomorrow is a big date. The EDD site is listed there. You can also just Google California EDD COVID, and it'll take you to these same resources. As soon as that portal's up, you'll have the ability to apply for the PUA benefits. There's a link there for the SBA loans, both loan options and all of their programs. You can also just Google SBA COVID and that will come up. If you're seeking the status for your SBA EIDL loan, I've shared our contact there, Corey Williams at SBA. So Corey, corey.williams@sba.gov. He's the public information officer in California, based up in Sacramento. If you email him asking for an update, he's pretty good within a few days or so of getting back in touch and letting you know, what he was able to learn, with the loan officer. You can also call SBA customer service at the number shared there. California, the state of California also has a loan program. They didn't really touch on this. I know they're still hustling to find a suite of lenders. This is similar to the PPP program in that you're not getting a loan directly from the state, the same way you're not getting a loan directly from SBA on PPP. But this is a state guaranteed loan program. So that means that lenders will be more apt to lend to you because they know the state will step in and cover defaults and things like that up to a certain percent, making it more attractive to the banks. And so that one is at ibank.ca.gov. And so there may be some state benefit resources if you're not able to get the federal loan resources. The last one there is the California Department of Insurance and some of their guidelines around the COVID disaster. And again, we recommend anybody with business insurance to look at your policy, look into going over your business disruption policies, and potentially filing a claim.
And may I ask you one more? I just want to reiterate, we did talk about this, but just because of ArtCenter's, we're talking to alumni and students, I just want to have you reiterate that as a student, you can still apply for certain of some of these programs to make sure that people really understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're just I think a full-time student without any other sort of outside activities, you're probably not eligible for these programs. These really are designed for businesses. But if you're a student who's doing freelance work, things on the side, maybe you've launched your own small business side project, you would certainly qualify for these resources. So you should definitely apply for things like the pandemic unemployment to make up for any sort of side jobs you may have been doing, or if it's appropriate to keep your new small business going, take advantage of one of these loan programs.
Great. Thank you. Is there, oh, here's Robbie.
Thank you, Pat and Yvette. That was brilliant. A lot of information covered. I think that the two things I'd like to add are ArtCenter is here to help you with all of this. We see our community as not just our students and alumni, but the entire creative community. And we provide a whole bunch of courses and classes that can be accessed through our ArtCenter at Night and other platforms. So if you have time and you're thinking about learning new skills or enhancing what it is that you do with your business, look to us for guidance. We definitely want to be there to support your growth through this period, especially if you have time on your hands. And then as we roll out the rest of these programs over the summer, we're very much responding to what we hear from the community. So what you're undergoing as founders and owners and freelancers, it's really important to let us know. And we can then design programs and webinars and resources that fit your needs accordingly. So we're here, and we know it's hard, and we know that as somebody that's working on their own with a studio and undergoing social distancing, it can feel like the whole world is somewhere else. But we are definitely dedicated to our community and want to make sure that everybody makes it out of this in a really positive way. And I think the sort of the tenor of a lot of what we want to offer for the next set of webinars is what can we learn from past periods of economic disruption, and to look at those case studies of founders and owners who have undergone those changes and really responded to them in a way that's helped them succeed in business. So that's going to be a broad part of our theme. And again, we're here for you. We'll follow up for the attendees with a recording of the webinar when we can actually get that online and hosted. We'll also send the links that Pat provided and any other follow-up resources that were mentioned in the discussion thus far. And other than that, I think I just would like to thank Pat and Yvette. And there's a whole team also behind the scenes helping us moderate and organize the session in Zoom and online. So it seems simple, but the complexities are there, and we are very thankful to have that support from ArtCenter and our community. And Yvette and Pat, just thank you so much for your time and for really listening to what people are struggling with. And of course, this is a work in progress. So we will continue to be here for you guys. And that goes for the whole team at Bold and all of ArtCenter. So thank you. And thank you to everybody out there. You know how to reach us, and stay tuned for more.
Thank you.
Any final thoughts, Pat and Yvette?
The one last thing I'd like to share is that, you know, I know as creatives, people are often, you know, just assuming that these things don't apply for them, or, you know, basically disqualifying themselves. I urge people not to do that. Do not disqualify yourself. Leave that up to somebody on the other end reviewing. Go through the process, take a run at these resources if they make sense for you. Engage the SBDC to help along the way as much as we can. But just don't assume that you don't qualify for this stuff. Let us help you take a run at that.
Thank you so much for that, Pat. And Robbie, thanks for this opportunity to give back to ArtCenter as well. You've provided me so much, such a huge opportunity to continually work with the school to uplift or help uplift our alumni and students as well, of course, on their journeys. And it means more to me than you guys can ever imagine. And Pat, I can't tell you how grateful I am that I get to know you and that I met you and that we're working together. I'm so pleased that you took your time today. I know you're super busy right now.
I appreciate the opportunity to share our resources.
Well, thank you both, and we'll see you next time.
All right, thank you.